so Donald Trump gave his acceptance speech tonight. There were chants, as usual, of 4 more years, which I thought was the best ad for the Democratic Party that anybody could imagine. As they were chanting 4 more years, I kept thinking, the rest of the country's got to be exhausted at the idea of 4 more years of Trump. So I think it's a very counterproductive chant. If you notice, of course, he had a crowd there. They were not socially distancing at all. Almost no one had masks. Every once in a while, they showed the cabinet once. The only guy who had a mask on was the head of Health and Human Services. So he's like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm putting a mask on, because I just saw what COVID did. And they used the White House as the backdrop, which is brazenly illegal. It's a violation of the Hatch Act. He trolled in the middle of the speech and pointed to it and was like, I wonder what that's called, ha ha. Like, and then ironically talked about law and order. I just broke the law, ha ha, but law and order, which is like Trump 101. But this speech had 2 main components. One was, my God, the Democrats are going to destroy everything, and they're going to ruin America as we know it. My favorite line out of that was, Joe Biden is going to demolish the suburbs. I was like, man, I didn't know that was part of our plan. I didn't sign up for that. I kind of love the suburbs. I grew up in a suburb. I'm keeping it real. Okay, so I didn't know we had those plans. And always like, but the theme being, we're gonna keep America the way it used to be, with a giant wink added in. Like, don't worry, I'm gonna put the cops everywhere. We're gonna crush anyone who dares to protest when we abuse them or shoot them. Okay, we're gonna bring back America where white right wingers have always been in charge. And I'm gonna make sure you stay in charge and you lord that over everyone else. That's what I'm gonna do. And so that was an enormous section of the speech. But now it's important to note that there was a significant progressive portion of the speech. So he talked about how he killed TPP, how he was against the wars. That was a theme throughout the Republican convention, that they were against wars. Democrats never mentioned they were against wars. God damn it, man. Even Trump, that mentally challenged guy in the White House, knows that when you're in election season, the country's progressive, so they want to hear messages like that. They beat back the trade deals that Biden signed, like NAFTA. He talked about how he lowered prescription drug prices. Obama had 8 years. Now look, a lot of it is misleading. The stuff that he did on prescription drug prices, if it was great, I would tell you, right? I actually think the new deal with Mexico and Canada is not that bad. And I told you that in the play-by-play. I'm telling you that now. He did do criminal justice reform. Could he have done more? Yes, but at least he did that. Did he do any police reform? No. So you have to take it case by case, issue by issue, and be honest about it. But he did do some criminal justice reform. He did fund some historically black colleges and universities, and the Democrats allowed him to brag about all that because they're so stupid that while Trump is running left on those issues, they're running right into the Republican Party's arms and helping Republican framing. So look, the speech was monstrously long. That's another. And by the end, we were talking about Wyatt Earp and 5G and Iwo Jima, and just it got absurd. Trump ran out of gas, and I almost thought he was going to faint at the end of the speech. Like, and then Iwo Jima, right? And but guys, it has to be noted that one thing the Republicans do right is they kick the living crap out of Democrats. They understand that those are their opponents. So even whether it's right or wrong, whether they're lying or it's true, most of the time it's lies. They will say outrageous things about the Democrats. Oh, China wants Biden to win. Biden is going to be best friends with China and Iran, and he didn't want to kill bin Laden, all these whatever outrageous thing after outrageous. Democrats are the worst. There's gonna be anarchy. They're demolishing the whole country. You go to the Democratic convention and crickets against the Republicans. In fact, it was littered with Republicans. It was Republican after Republican saying, now remember how right the Republican Party is, but we're just gonna be a little less than them. As usual, disastrous framing by the Democrats. Make your case. They barely even attacked Trump in their convention, and now the Republicans return the favor by lighting them on fire.
Well, it's absolutely right, Cenk. And I mean, I remember in 2016, really the first political event I went to with the Young Turks was I saw Trump speak right after Bernie Sanders had dropped out. And he was talking about how he was with Bernie on no corporate PAC money, on how Hillary Clinton was bought by the corporations and how he was self-funded. And he leaned into that populism. And I thought, oh boy, he's obviously steered away from that massively and hasn't legislated like that at all as a drain the swamp candidate. I mean, Steve Mnuchin is his Treasury Secretary. He has rewarded his campaign donors over and over again, et cetera. But as Cenk pointed out, Republicans know to lean into populism, at least the Trump campaign does. And this was indicative in Ivanka's speech as well, which was, I think, the best speech of the entire convention. They know to make your case in terms of popular goals and obfuscate. I mean, it's all lies. Trump didn't really lower prescription drug prices. His trade deal was kind of TPP light or NAFTA light, I should say. But it doesn't, if you say it enough times and if people start to believe it, that's really all that matters. And that's what Trump does. He markets himself. Now, I will say that their marketing of Joe Biden is quite confusing. So for example, they say how Biden wants the inner cities to run rampant and for crime to infest everywhere. But they also want to talk about how he authored the 1994 crime bill, which is true, and how he locked up people unnecessarily. So what is it? What is it? So they're gonna be tough and smart on crime? The reality is that Republicans' position on crime is to the right of Joe Biden's, even though Biden is on the right on that issue. And so they can't really make that case. So they play both sides and hope people just get confused and just think Biden's bad in general. But again, my overall takeaway about the RNC Trump speech in general, so much racism, but God, is there a clearer message than what the Democrats were talking about with vague unity? Again, I keep talking about it's like an American Idol episode. It's schmaltzy, but there was no policy to tie it together. You can make suburban moms cry, but for the rest of people, what does this connect to? And the Democrats couldn't make that connection because they don't want to be tied to anything with Joe Biden as a president at all, policy-wise.
Well, look, I think that if a progressive was running, we'd landslide them. That's what I've said from day one. Yeah, now that we have blank slate Biden running, I'm just hoping we eke it out. Every day I get a little bit more pessimistic. So I still think we're gonna win. I still think he's a disaster. But Democrats are trying to find a way to lose this thing. Nancy Pelosi today talking about how maybe we should have no debates. That reinforces the framing that Joe Biden is weak and hiding, et cetera. She's so bad at her job. She's like the worst politician I've ever seen in my life. And like we've been saying, they didn't offer anything. Now look, and by the way, the whole thesis of Biden's convention was if we appease the Republicans enough, we have Colin Powell and Kasich, et cetera, they'll like us. Well, the last time Joe Biden tried that, or actually he's tried it dozens of times, but one of the most famous times he tried it was when he voted for the Iraq war. And do you like me now? And Trump now turns around and says, idiot, voted for the Iraq war started by Republicans. How could he be so stupid as to agree with a Republican? 1994 crime bill, yeah, it was a disaster. We're against it because we're progressives. Guess what? It was a Republican idea. And Biden's like, oh, I'll champion a Republican idea. And now the Republicans use it against them. But the corporate Democrats are never gonna learn their lesson because they serve their corporate donors and they're weak by nature. So now, like, don't get us wrong. Trump lied in almost every part of the speech. He had this outrageous, outlandish story about all the politicians in Washington came up to me and said, please let China keep ripping us off and keep taking our jobs. Really? Name one politician who said that. Nobody said that. You're such a liar. It's such an obvious liar. I mean, the best thing you could say is, hyperbole. He was joking. He didn't say he was joking, but hey, we're gonna pretend he was joking because that's such an obvious lie, right? He called Joe Biden the destroyer of jobs. What is he, Thanos? Okay, so once he snaps his fingers, half the jobs will be gone. By the way, that's what you did. 20 million jobs are gone. And he keeps talking about before a certain period of time, I was doing great. Well, how are you doing now, Trump? You blew it on coronavirus. And on coronavirus, they constantly say, and Trump said it too, I mean, we weren't that bad. We weren't that bad. I mean, I got some numbers that show that some European countries on some metrics might have been slightly worse than us. No, we lead the world in cases, we lead the world in deaths. And then he made up this new number that I've never heard before. And sometimes it's hard to fact check Trump because he makes up numbers on the spot. That we conducted 40 million more tests than any other country in the world. There's no way that's true, okay?
Yeah.
So just throws it out there, just throwing stuff out in the middle of a really important speech with a teleprompter. They lie with abandon, to throwing caution to the wind. Meanwhile, the Democrats are afraid of their own shadow. So yeah, the Republicans are monstrous. That we're not going to actually destroy the suburbs. He talks about, oh, they're in favor of human traffickers. Ghislaine Maxwell is a human trafficker, and you twice said that you were good friends with her and that you wished her well. She trafficked young girls. That's what she got arrested for. But by the way, was that ever mentioned in the Democratic convention? No, it would be impolite. People in the Washington Country Club would be put off by being impolite.
No, Cenk, they can't mention it because Bill Clinton is a featured speaker at the Democratic National Convention.
So what? The Republicans mention everything anyway.
I agree, but they literally are so wedded to the Clintons and yeah, I know, and other people like them that they can't see straight. I mean, they all run in the same elite circles, and again, it's one big club. We're not in it. Ivanka Trump and Chelsea Clinton were BFFs. Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. I mean, yeah, they can all human traffic, abuse young girls, whatever. They're all rich and above it. But yeah, I hear what you're saying about the Democrats' weakness, and I think really what scares me is the strength of Republican messaging at this time. Because if Democrats want to turn out enough people, but they need to have something stronger than just empathy, which was all that they focused on at the Democratic National Convention. And I feel the same way as you, Cenk. I feel the air kind of slowly being let out of the balloon, and it's palpable. And I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, so look, lastly on Trump's speech and the RNC overall. So they constantly emphasize it's gonna be anarchy and mob rule. And Emma makes a great point about the hypocrisy of saying, can you believe he did the crime bill, which got tough on people and put a lot of people in prison, and then turning around and saying these socialist anarchists, liberals are getting rid of law and order, and we got to put everyone back in prison and brutalize them. So which one is it, right? So that was a giant theme. So why do I bring that up? Because it's obvious that they got two different polls. One poll showed Biden's killing Trump on empathy. So that's why all the speakers came up and said, oh, Trump is so kind. You'd never believe how nice he is to families secretly. You're right, we wouldn't believe it because it's not true. And if he actually was nice to people, we see it because he's got verbal diarrhea. He can't stop himself. There's no way that he's secretly nice when we're not looking. That's not a thing, right? But they have a poll saying Biden's killing on empathy. And then they have a poll that apparently, because Trump accidentally, as usual, mentioned it in his speech. Oh, the polling is not good for them on the mob violence. Oh, that's why you guys keep calling it mob violence and keep pounding that, and Trump pounded it over and over again. But at the end of the day, whether it's the 94 crime bill, the Iraq war vote, Biden's support of all the trade deals, and on and on and on. Basically, they're saddling Biden with all of his own downsides, which are true, and then they're saddling him with socialist, anarchist anyway. He called it the Biden-Bernie manifesto. He said Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism, and he beat that socialism theme and that dead horse even more throughout the night, okay? And so we told you that the pundits on cable news were misleading you. They were telling you, oh, no, if you put Bernie in there, they'll call him socialist, so you can't win. They called Biden socialist anyway. We told you they were gonna call Biden a socialist. They called Obama a Marxist and a communist. We knew they were gonna do that. Now, if you think that's a downside, we have that and Biden's actual downsides. So as usual, Democrats very poorly played. At the end of the day, Trump's speech littered with lies. If we lived in a world where the media could fact check him and people believed in facts, and full of demagoguery and full of racism, I would say that it's a terrible speech. But in terms of politics, he played some themes that he knows are good with everyone, like lowering prescription drug prices, because it's a progressive policy. And he plays some themes to his base. So politically, it probably wasn't all that bad, and probably better than what the Democrats did. And the Democrats will never believe that, because they'll think, what are you talking about? We were so genteel. All of polite society loved Biden's speech, and polite society doesn't like Trump's speech. I don't know if you could tell from 2016, polite society does not decide elections. So I think we're gonna win, but this time, it's just, we had a giant lead because Trump is so monstrous and disastrous. And it's just Biden trying to lose that lead till the end.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.